So the fundamental teaching of Advaita Vedanta, aka non-duality, is the fabric of reality is consciousness. If you're anything like me, I would, for many years, think, I understand this. I have analysed this teaching, I've picked it apart, and I get it. It's the one appearing separate. The fabric of reality is consciousness. But it didn't do much for me. I thought, is that it? I get it. The fabric of reality is consciousness. I don't feel any different. Until I started pondering the true implications of this. If that's the case, what does it mean for all these unexplained experiences people are having? But before I get into that, what's the mainstream view still of the scientific community and most people, the average person that doesn't think about this much? Materialism. In the beginning, there was a big bang, a cold, dark, unconscious universe emerged that somehow, in some beings, gave rise to consciousness. This mysterious thing called consciousness that humans possess, animals, possibly bugs and plants. But it's just this sense of reality's at the fundamental level, nothing. Cold, dark, inert, we're all separate. Consciousness is generated from the brain, like a light switch in my brain, in your brain. We're all separate, we're all not connected. We're born, we came out of nothing, we live for a certain amount of time, we go back to nothing. What God? We have science. We can logically pick apart this reality. What God? That's the mainstream view. And that mainstream view has made so many people depressed. So many people feel science is all there is. We need to and can only pick apart reality through the scientific method. Break things apart. Break things down into their smaller components. And we're just a clump of these components. No wonder people are depressed. No wonder many people have lost a faith in a God. What God? Where? It doesn't logically make sense. That's the problem right there. But when we flip this and look at this other model, that consciousness is the fundamental nature of reality, when you truly ponder that, what is that saying? The ground of all being is conscious intelligence. The fabric, one and undivided fabric, is the fabric of all. All people and objects, there aren't even really people and objects, there's just the appearance of people and objects. What's the implications of that? If the nature of reality is consciousness, consciousness is all there is, everything is infinite and eternal. Nothing is coming and going. Nothing is truly separate at the fundamental level. And that explains how things like mind reading are possible, special abilities, out-of-body experiences. Of course, if we're all part of a unified whole, connected at the fundamental level, of course, the conscious intelligence running through all bodies and minds, coming from the one source, of course we can sync up and mind read, gain special abilities, out-of-body experiences, all that kind of stuff. It will make sense because it's the one appearing separate. And that's the thing in life. There's been two authorities in life. In the past, it was the church. The church had all the authority and science had to appease the church. Just like around the time of Galileo. He was the first to say that the sun doesn't revolve around the earth revolves around the sun. And the Catholic Church didn't like this and he had to retract his statement, if I'm not mistaken. They had all the power. If you're not in with the Catholic Church, you're out. Even Rene Descartes, most famously known for his saying, I think, therefore I am, in his meditations, he started it off with sucking up to the head of the theological department of Paris, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, he was sucking up to the Catholic Church, saying, everything I'm writing is compatible with God and the Catholic Church. I'm a Catholic. He had to do this whole big thing of sucking up because he knew if they don't approve of what he's writing, it's not going to get published. Eventually, it was banned, I think 20 years later or something. Because what happened to Galileo was only 8 years earlier. So he thought, I better suck up to the church to get this thing published. But whether he was truly a Christian or not, Apparently, Blaise Pascal didn't think much of him. They lived around the same time. And Blaise Pascal, if you don't know, was heavily devotional to the Christian God. He had a vision called his Night of Fire, which changed his life dramatically. But that's the thing. The reigning authority figures was the church. What about in this day and age? It's science. The high priests of science. That's how I like to call them. And most people have taken on the scientific belief system. But here's the thing. Science and spirituality aren't at odds. Many people now think if it can't be explained scientifically, it's nonsense. Science is in the business of studying the objective reality, dividing things up, pulling it apart. What are its components? And when you just think through that way of thinking, it makes us feel like nothing, like robots, like life is meaningless. We can pick apart the human body. We can study the human body. We can study our thoughts and feelings. We can analyze them. But what does that tell us about our felt human experience? That the story of our life. It would be like this. You could take a book and study what the book is made from. The paper, the cardboard of the book jacket. You can study the ink that was written in the book, the font. If you see what I'm saying, you can pick apart the book, analyze it. But that's going to tell you nothing about the story. To understand the story, to appreciate the story, to get a feeling and emotion, you need to zoom out from all this. What's the paper made from? What's the book jacket made from? What font? What ink are they using? Zoom back and read the story, and that's where you're going to feel, and that's where you're going to be filled with all this emotion. So what's true? Did you feel emotion reading that story? Yes. But when we zoom in, what's the story made from? The paper, the ink. If you see what I'm getting at, it's the same with this reality. Science is great. It explains how the objective reality works. But you can't explain your inner experience with science. And that's the whole mystery of consciousness. So to truly live a well-balanced life, you need science and spirituality. They're not at odds with each other. It's just in the past, religion was the reigning authority, and now it's science. But thankfully, science is slowly coming around, I feel. And eventually we're going to live in a time where I feel they're going to come to the realization consciousness is the fundamental nature of reality. And that's going to open up a whole world of possibilities. You might be saying, yeah, but if that's true, why don't I feel much now? Because if your deep-seated belief is consciousness emerges from matter, like just say that's your deep-seated belief, but then overlaid on top of that, you've heard, oh, it's the one appearing separate. Consciousness is the fundamental nature of reality. That's why nothing's changing. What you deeply feel, just say if you deeply feel, I'm just a material body, consciousness comes from the brain, but then you've heard some Advaita Vedanta knowledge that's not the case, you're in a state of cognitive dissonance. And what always wins out? What we feel. Our deep-seated beliefs is what always wins out. And where do we get that? From authority figures. Watch what happens when science makes this mainstream. When science comes out and says, yes, the fundamental nature of reality is consciousness, things like mind reading are possible, things like out-of-body experience are possible, things like acquiring so much knowledge is possible, like downloading it from the cloud. Once it becomes mainstream, watch how it changes everyone's life. And watch how many people spring up with all these dormant abilities inside of all of us, probably. Because what we believe literally shapes our reality. It would be like, have you heard of that 4-minute mile? They used to think it's impossible to run a mile under 4 minutes until Roger Bannister in 1954 did it. Ever since him, around 2,000 people have achieved that same feat. It's still rare, it's still very hard, but he showed it's possible for a human body to do that. So it's the same with all this. If you take on the belief systems, your deep-seated beliefs and feelings are, the nature of reality is material, consciousness somehow emerges from it, and when we die, that's it, lights out, like you never existed. That's all you're working with. So you're never going to look at the teachings of God or spirituality with any sincerity. You're constantly hearing religious people say, God is found in the heart. You need to devote, surrender, pray, all that kind of stuff. You're like, yeah, I get it. Cool. That sounds nice. It's not going to have a deep impact. But if your deep-seated belief and feeling is the fabric of reality is consciousness, it makes so much more sense to pray. For instance, because what are you praying to? That deep intelligence that is the fabric of all. That is the source of my body and mind, your body and mind, 8 billion bodies and minds, all the plants, all the animals. There aren't even plants, animals, and people. There is just the one fabric appearing as all this. Just like this example. The one sun shooting off into multiple sun rays. In a similar way, the one conscious ground of being splitting off into all of us. So what would you be praying to, surrendering to? That deep intelligence. That deep intelligence that's always there, always waiting for you to ask for its help or whatever you need, guidance, anything. But our ego blocks it out because our ego is made of all our current belief systems. So the whole point of this video is, in summary, if you're anything like my past self, very intellectual, didn't want to touch these teachings of God, anything like that, thought it was nonsense, got into Buddhism because they don't believe in a God, then Advaita Vedanta, picked that philosophy apart. That's why I can talk about it so much. I know the ins and outs of all of it. Didn't feel much. Would ignore the teachings of God. But then I thought, yeah, it's the one appearing separate. Let's try some devotion, surrender. Changed my life. That was the missing puzzle piece. Gave me the sense of peace, freedom, happiness. Advaita Vedanta will show you how everything is one intellectually. Practices like meditation, surrender, devotion, makes you feel oneness. And again, once it's mainstream that this is the case, watch how many dormant abilities are probably going to spring up in all of us. All these unexplained experiences people have, that science just dismisses it as, it could be a fantasy, where's the proof? Seriously, we're living in an exciting time. And hopefully I see this change in my lifetime. I'm only middle-aged now, but the rate of change that is happening in this day and age, perhaps I will be around for that to be the mainstream. But we don't have to wait for that. Just have an open mind, study these teachings. Just try it. If you haven't, take some time off to revisit devotional books and teachings about God. Maybe you just need to redefine your view of what God is, not some old man in the sky judging us. Perhaps God is the deep conscious intelligence running through all reality. And it can't be put into concepts. Does God have a form? Some people say they've experienced God in form. Some people say God is formless. Do you really think this deep intelligence can be boxed into a concept? This would be like an ant trying to understand your human mind. Do we really think we're that smart? All we're doing is living through our concepts that were fed to us, whatever the current paradigm is. Humans are tribal and look up to authority. If everyone around you is an atheist and materialist, and your authority figures, science is telling you that, of course, you're going to say, look, I freely chose to be an atheist. No, you didn't. Just everyone around you was thinking and feeling that. So that's the belief system you took on. Belief system. If everyone around you is religious and the people you look up to are saying there's a higher intelligence, a deeper intelligence, pray, serve, devote, you're going to do it and you're going to experience so many beautiful benefits. Again, just remember, put things in their proper place. Science divides up reality, tells us what it is. Spirituality gives it meaning. Like that book example again. You can study the paper it's made from, the ink, the font, the book cover, the cardboard quality, the colors, analyze it all. Or you can zoom back, read the thing, and feel all the emotions. They're two different realities that are one. At the ultimate level, reality is a paradox. Does God have form or no form? Both and neither. Do you have free will or not? Yes and no. It all matters on the perspective you're approaching this from. So that's all I want to say. Again, just to end this video, if you've understand it's the one appearing separate, the fundamental nature of reality is consciousness, and you go, yeah, and? So what? That was me. It's because perhaps you haven't studied the implications of what that means. And if this is true, the very fabric, the ground of all being is consciousness. Of course, all these mystical experiences and abilities are common sense. And when the scientific community, our authority figures, catches up to this, I honestly feel the world is going to change. It's going to be an exciting time and place to live. Our thoughts create our reality. Thinking are just a bunch of atoms that somehow generated some consciousness, which is a magic trick. They haven't figured that out, and they never will. How unconscious, dead inert matter somehow gives rise to consciousness. If that's what you think about yourself, you're just a body, was nothing in the past, having an experience now will be nothing in the future. Of course, that's depressing. And that's the belief system. I'll leave you with that anyway. Hope this video helps. Take care.